how they was treating the blacks in America. We didn't know that.
Yeah.
And so Haitians would go to America, and when she got to the room, the doctor wouldn't give her pain medication, saying these people are exaggerating, and didn't realize like she was black also, and saying these people. But also Haitians, when they came to America, they didn't realize racism was not a thing because everybody was just human beings.
Right.
It's when they got here they realized, oh, and also another thing about Haitians, they thought like, oh, they talking about African Americans. Well, I'm Haitian.
That's so funny.
So that's
man.
another thing she think. Oh, they must be talking that African Americans don't feel pain.
That is
when they're
so
pregnant.
crazy. You know what's wild? As you're saying these things, the two thoughts that come to my mind. One is how similar the stories of racism are around the world.
Trevor, are they really that similar? Let's ask Malcolm X.
Even in South Africa, those Africans aren't faced with bayonets and aren't faced with police dogs and where these African nations, knowing the brutality that is inflicted upon black people in this country, simply because those black people are trying to get what the Supreme Court said they were supposed to have 10 years ago. I would be not a man. If I was in a position to bring it in front of the United Nations and didn't do so, I wouldn't be.
We were facing the worst type of violence in the world at that time, and the world was not aware. That's why Malcolm X wanted to bring up this human rights issue to the United Nations so we can get support to stop the killings. But Trevor Noah to say it's crazy how similar racism is around the world. Right after that man just said that his mother didn't know that she was going to be on the receiving end of racism because she was Haitian and not African American. It's just, what is going on here?
African Americans it's part of my culture. I don't care what anybody says. My friends, a lot of my friends are African American playing football. Half Southern, they're my boys. It's like, nah, you know. And you study American history, and you really study how African Americans have suffered. You go, you know how many African Americans are hardworking? Yep. All about education. So what are you going to say? W.E.B. Du Bois, who was the first to get a PhD at Harvard, he wasn't working hard? Right. I'm talking about in the early 1900s when they didn't let us have shit. Right. How did he get a PhD at that time? You're talking about Lewis Latimer, who invented the filament for the light bulb. That's the reason why Edison, when they were trying to invent the light bulb, it was all kerosene. So it was exploding. I read the whole book. I read Edison's biography. It was all exploding everywhere. And Lewis Latimer, black dude, right, apprentice, that filament that you see in the light bulb is a black man that made it. Because every February was Lewis Latimer. Right. But he was the one that created it. When it was, we appreciate that. We appreciate it, but African Americans have always been hardworking.
But no, African Americans have been hardworking, but I don't know.
But opportunity.
What about the appreciation of the hard work for the immigrants who came to this country and worked hard?
Here's the thing is the Civil Rights Bill is the reason why our parents got to come over here. 1964, Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was one of the most racist son of a bitches on the planet, had to sign that civil rights. But you know, Martin Luther King is sitting right next to him.
Right. Yep.
So that is the reason why Koreans can come here. Koreans, Indians, Arabs, Nigerians. It's because of the Civil Rights Bill. Right. It's because of African Americans, foundational black, coming in here, busting their ass, being treated like shit, right, being hung, lynched, Jim Crow. Right. From slavery was Jim Crow, segregation, Reconstruction, being promised that they were going to get this, fighting every war. Black people fought in every single war and still being disrespected, not being able to buy homes. Right. You understand? Burning up of black towns. And people go, well, why aren't they? They saw opportunities. There were black Wall Streets. There were black banks, black hospitals, and they came like
African immigrants do not view racism the same way as Black Americans because we were looking at it from two completely different perspectives. Africans grew up in majority Black nations with Black culture, Black leadership, and Black everything being the norm on a day-to-day basis. It's not the core part of their identity because everyone is majority Black when they look around. Black is the default. So off rip, they are not looking at things through a racial lens. But Black people in America look at everything through a racial lens because we are the minority in a country that was built off of our oppression. And the entire system was designed not only to exclude us, but to capitalize off of that exclusion. So systemic oppression is the struggle that Black Americans are dealing with on the home front. Struggles that people are dealing with in Africa are due to a failing or underdeveloped system. Poverty, corruption, lack of opportunity, economic instability, which is really the legacy of colonialism and neocolonialism. So in their minds, they see America as having a functioning system. They see America as full of opportunity compared to back in Africa. So they come here and they focus on individual advancement, where Black Americans see the system as being historically and currently rigged against us. We are not immigrants. We are people from whom system was explicitly built to oppose. They often see racism as individual prejudice, personal act of meanness or ignorance that can be overcome or ignored on their path to success, where Black people understand that it is systemically embedded feature of law, institution, and economic that create a barrier far beyond individual prejudice. And I think a lot of the disagreement comes from not understanding what something means to be systemic. When something is systemic, a pattern behavior or a culture that is repetitive that many people are perpetuating. Because there are many people in America who are racist and have anti-Black sentiment, and they encompass various positions and roles in America, it makes racism systemic. The system is not a machine, but the individuals who make up the machine. Since so many people are racist, the issue is systemic. They have embedded personal prejudices into the system. Not only that, are passing down this ideology to their offspring, which makes it more systemic. Anyways, so because of the hurdles that they faced back home, they often see what Black Americans go through as trivial or frivolous or not as hard as compared to what they went through back home. That's where the ideology that Black Americans are lazy comes from, because they face national systemic instability in their homelands. But what they are not understanding is that what Africa is going through is a core function of systemic racism. It is systemic racism on a global scale. Systemic instability for Black Americans is internal. It's redlining, it's mass incarceration, it's police brutality, it's education inequity. But for Africa, it's the deliberate underdevelopment of the entire continent that is primarily populated by Black people. It's the European powers carving up the continent with no regards for ethnic, linguistic, or cultural boundaries, and the creation of artificial nations primed for internal conflict. It's the exploitation used by Western corporations and financial institutions like IMF and the World Bank, pillaging resources and dictating economic policy through debt. This is economic racism on a global scale. The ideology that justified slavery in America, the belief in white supremacy, and the inferiority of Black people is the exact same ideology that justified the colonization of Africa. Africans say, I came over here and succeeded, why can't you? They are comparing overcoming poverty caused by global anti-racism, anti-Blackness, i.e. colonialism, to the Black American experience of overcoming poverty by domestic anti-Black racism. We are battling the monsters created by the same beast, white supremacy. One monster was unleashed abroad to destabilize and plunder nations. The other was built at home to control and exploit the population. Defeating one does not mean the other does not exist. It just means you're fighting in a different arena. Anyways, if you're new here, welcome. Almost my entire page is dedicated to deconstructing white supremacy. And this particular topic is the foundation of a new theory that I'm working on called the diasporic division stratagem. And this video is already too long, but I already have an entire playlist dedicated to it, and I will be expanding upon it soon. But basically, the gist of it is white supremacy created all of this friction between Black Americans and people of the diaspora so that we would never come together and fight global white supremacy. But we actually have more in common than we have apart. And our main fight will always be against white supremacy.
What happens when people who once believed racism in America was exaggerated begin to say they misunderstood it? And that is the conversation we're exploring today. Across social media, some African immigrants have shared personal stories about living the United States and how living in the United States and how their perspective changed after experiencing discrimination firsthand. Of course, these experiences don't represent everyone, but they have sparked a broader discussion about race, identity, and different lived experiences in America. Let's take a closer look.
African immigrants do not view racism the same way as Black Americans because we were looking at it from two completely different perspectives.
If you truly believe that it's different for us, why don't you just copy what we do? We just don't care. And the reason why we don't care is because our parents did not tell us to care about it. They never did. Your parents, your grandparents told you to care about it. And that's the problem with the Black American community. Your grandparents told your parents about racism. And your parents told you about racism. Then you're going to grow up and tell your kids about racism. And the problem continues because you keep on talking about it. Listen, my dad was born in 1961. That's a year after Congo became an independent country. So my dad grew up watching the country going from colonization to becoming what it is today. My dad has never sat me down to tell me about how he was growing up. Never. Never! And that will never be my dad's story. My dad's story is the story of a 17-year-old who came from a Congolese village, made it to the capital, and now owns multiple properties. That is my dad's story. My dad's story will never be the story of a young man who grew up in a country where white folks used to mistreat his father. My dad's story will never be the story of a young man who came from a woman who was probably the result of a rape, because my grandma is light-skinned as hell and we don't even know who our parents are. We don't have that information. So we can only assume that she was probably the result of a rape during colonization. We just leave it at that. And we decide to not make that our story. You see that? Decision. You can decide what you can be. So why don't you just copy us? Just copy us and do what we do. You can see racism. You can acknowledge that racism exists. And you can also just choose to not let it bother you. Just don't let it bother you. You see it, walk past it, carry on.
Well, many people who move to the US arrive with hope of better opportunities, and before arriving, some believe that success depends mostly on education and handwork. But after spending years in the country, some say that they have encountered challenges they didn't expect. They describe moments where they felt judged because of their race or even found themselves being viewed differently than they anticipated. Some creators online have openly admitted that these experiences made them consider conversations they had previously dismissed. Their message isn't that everyone's experience is identical. Instead, they say living through certain situations gave them a new perspective. So, for many Black Americans, discussions about racism have existed for generations. Many point to historical events such as segregation, housing discrimination, employment barriers, and unequal treatment within institutions as reasons these conversations have continued for decades. Some viewers argue that hearing similar concerns from newer immigrants makes the discussion feel different because the observation come from people with different backgrounds and expectations. Others believe that this creates opportunity for many to understand instead of more division. Regardless of where someone stands politically, many agree that listening to different experiences can lead to better conversations. Whether someone agrees or disagrees with their opinions shared online, one thing is clear. Conversations about race, identity, and opportunity remains important topics in America. Personal experience shapes how people see the world, and sometimes those experiences cause people to think or to rethink beliefs they once held. So the real question isn't who wins the argument. It is whether people are willing to listen, compare experiences respectfully, and have honest conversations based on facts rather than assumptions. What do you guys think? Have social media conversations changed how people understand these issues, or do they create even more division? Let us know in the comments section, and kindly remember to keep it respectful. If you love breakdowns like these, hit the subscribe button and join our family. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.